Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services in Eastland, Texas. Tune in every week as we share important information to help you and your family live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, legacy and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Good morning and welcome into Life Planning 101. My name is Angela Robinson with Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services here in the big town of Eastland, Texas, where we help people live life on purpose no matter where they live. We got a great show today. I'm really excited to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. And, I just have a heart for, of what we do and how we do it. My dad, I'm very blessed to be second generation in this business and to have learned from his wisdom and what he saw because, he had started in banking. He went into insurance. After banking, he did property and casualty, which is, your home, auto, and liability and all those things. And then he started out into the life insurance world and health and long-term care and learned that. And then he sunk over into investments and, somewhere in the midst of that started doing estate planning. And what he started to figure out is that whatever people's product was they had to offer was always the solution. In other words, the banker's solution was always a banking product. The insurance agent's solution was always an insurance product. The investment guy was always an investment that they could sell. And the truth is that life doesn't work like that. Sometimes when you have a nail, you need a hammer, not a screwdriver, right? And yet, if you're talking to the wrong person and all they've got is a screwdriver, how do you know that they only have a screwdriver when that's not the world that you live in? I mean, you think about, let's just stick with the theme of, building a house. You hire someone that has the wherewithal so that house doesn't collapse, right? And the same applies with your retirement. The same applies with your future. We call it living life on purpose, right? Is that everything in your plan, your life plan, should be there to support you living life on purpose. For years, we did these educational programs through the universities and had a tagline, helping people retire successfully and stay successfully retired. Well, that's a big deal, right? And what I want to talk about today in particularly is guarantees, okay? You hear that word thrown around, and I say thrown around because it is thrown around by salespeople a lot, whether they're selling a bank product, whether they're selling a government instrument, whether they're selling an insurance product, which is backed by an insurance company. And really, it's only guaranteed by that insurance company, by the way, but we'll get to that. And the reason I want to talk about guarantees is because I think people, especially in times of tribulation, right? Right now, the market's been humming along and things are looking a lot better. Things are kind of feeling better, but this economy is shaky. Our world is shaky. And at any given time, more war could break out. Something could crash and cause this fear to set in. And that's when you really start to hear about these guarantees. Heck, you hear about gold providing guarantees, right? And the word guarantee itself most often gets two responses because of this. It gets this, number one, sigh of relief, guarantee, safety. If you're retiring, heck, that's what you're looking for, right? Is to stay successfully retired. And what's that going to take? So when you hear the word guarantee, you think that that's able to accomplish that. And then number two, on the flip side, some people say, is this too good to be true? And there's a lot to warrant that. So the quest for today's show is, are guarantees enough? Because I'm going to say that guarantees are talking about a solution only when maybe that's not even the right thing that needs to be solved. So you're not going to want to miss this right here on Life Planning 101. You're going to get the lowdown on guarantees and are they enough for your retirement plan? Welcome back to Life Planning 101. My name is Angela Robinson with Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services here in Eastland, Texas, and we are talking about guarantees. Are they enough? So I want to start by kind of telling you a story about a lady that she's having a surgery for a heart attack, and she has a vision of God beside her bed, and she asks God, will I die? And God says, no, you got 30 more years to live. Well, with that, she's thinking, if I'm going to live 30 more years, I'm going to look my best. So while she's in the hospital, she decides to do all this plastic surgery and hair transplants and collagen injections, all this stuff, and she looks awesome. And the day she's discharged, she starts to walk across the street from the hospital in her new swagger, and she immediately gets hit by an ambulance and killed. And she looks up to God. She says, wait a minute. You said I'm going to have 30 years. And he said, well, that's true. She said, so what the heck happened? He says, well, I didn't recognize you. Oh, man, I know it's a little bit extreme, but it does work well when we're talking about guarantees because, guarantees are all about a promise, right? If you think about, you hear about guarantees advertised. They're advertised on radio shows, whether it be, gold or government instruments, banking products, insurance products, whatever it is, and they're guaranteeing something. Well, what are they actually guaranteeing? That's what I want you to really pay attention to. And then, of course, how this fits into your overall life plan, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But let's just back up for a second. Here's the picture. Anyone retiring today, or even already retired, would tell you that they would love to see the success of their retirement guaranteed. In fact, that's why there are countless sales professionals that rely on that feeling and on your fear to sell those guarantees, okay? And I say countless because guarantees are often oversold, okay? They are oversold, period. They're sold more than they should be. However, doesn't make them bad. And I want to get that very clear, okay? Guarantees have a place, and sometimes they're needed, they're warranted, they should be used, but they are oversold. And here's the reason why. There is not a product out there that can guarantee what that retiree said they wanted. The retiree said they wanted the success of their retirement. Products guarantee income. They may guarantee a rate that's paid, something to that nature. But buyer beware, because this doesn't automatically breed a successful retirement. And I'm going to give you an example, an illustration, just to point this out. I want you to imagine that you retired at the end of 2020, just basically 3 years ago, right? So end of 2020, December 2020. And let's fast forward. You're sitting here in December of last year. So it's been exactly 3 years. And you had bought at the end of your retirement a guaranteed lifetime annuity that was going to pay you and your spouse $7,500 a month. All right. Fast forward 3 years. You're still receiving that $7,500 a month. Now, we went through a little bit of this thing called inflation. Has anyone noticed that? Anyone noticed that the cost of goods have gone up, the grocery bills have gone up, or anything like that to that nature? I mean, I have. But this is the point, okay? This is the point. So in 2023, inflation was up tremendously. In 2022, inflation was up tremendously. In 2021, inflation was up tremendously. In fact, it averaged in 2021 4.7%. It averaged in 22 8.8%, and it averaged in 23 4.1% according to the government's charts, right? So if I took that $7,500 and I made it purchasing power dollars today, then it's really only worth $6,306 3 years later. It lost almost $1,200 of its purchasing power. Let me say that another way. If I was buying a certain amount of groceries and things to live on at the end of 2020 for $7,500 a month, it would now take $8,828.41, so $8,828.41 to buy those exact same things if they all had gone up with this same inflation amount. Now think about that. 3 years into retirement, and I've already diluted my purchasing power that much, but I have the guarantee I have the guarantee. Am I sleeping at night? Let's think about that. Am I sleeping at night, or did I just think, oh my gosh, where am I going to make that up? So that's where you have to ask yourself. So that could be quite a hit to your retirement right off the bat. What's going to make up that extra $1,328.41 each month for the rest of your retirement? And that's assuming there is no inflation going forward. Well, what are the chances of that? Well, historically, if we look at inflation, depending on what year you're sitting in, inflation is averaged, somewhere around 3 to 4% over the life of a retiree. You got to plan for it. You have to have that built into your plan. Now, a lot of salespeople, and I will say this, they will actually address that because they know that this is already out here. And so they have a plan for that. Maybe they have a product that gets a price index with it. Is that guaranteed? What does that actually look like? Is it tied exactly to CPI? Most of them are not. You have to be careful with that. A lot of these have a built-in, ratchet of 1 or 2%, but, this is an extreme case, and this is just price and point of, what we always talk about is when you retire, the 3 years before you retire and the 3 years after you retire, probably the most detrimental time for your plan to be successful, because that's going to dictate really the success of your plan through your retirement. It's called a sequence of returns risk. Well, this is sequence of returns risk, even though there is no investment returns, it's interest returns, it's inflation returns. Those are the things that you have to think about because they apply in no matter what world that you're looking at. And so this is an extremely important issue that I think people don't look at all the time. And I got worse news. A lot of times when you get into something like this, it's an irrevocable decision. What that means is you can't change it. You can't take it back. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can, but it's quite costly. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you've made an irrevocable move that you can't take back. I was so happy to see in the state of Texas that they actually started adding some normal inflation bumps into teachers' retirements, because we had always looked at teachers' retirements and said, okay, this is your retirement. Now, where's that extra set of money that we're going to keep up with inflation with? Because this is on a fixed income. And that's exactly why right there, that story right there. And, we've seen it time and time again where people that started on that fixed income, their retirement lifestyle dwindles because it has to dwindle to be able to stay retired. Is that the successful retirement that they actually dreamed about? I think not. Right? I bring up guarantees today because a lot of people are talking about guarantees. We're not in one of those fearful panic modes, I don't think, at this moment for a lot of people. I think people feel pretty good about their situation, but interest rates are good right now. And a lot of people are looking to lock in those interest rates. So even though there could be some very wise planning, very smart planning done around there, and it should be done around that, on the flip side to this, buyer beware. Because everything isn't just as it seems, right? It reminds me of a turtle that was crossing the road and he's mugged by 2 snails. Okay, you get the visual? All right, so the police show up and they ask the turtle, what happened? And he says, I don't know. It all happened so fast. Yeah, that's what you feel like when you get sold something. It all happens so fast. You actually really understand what you bought. Did it fit in with your overall life plan? People look at the solution as that is all there is. That's all there should be. Well, that's not necessarily the case. So when we come back, what we're going to talk about is exactly the things that could be too good to be true, so you know what you're looking at when you cross a guarantee. You're not going to miss it right here on Life Planning 101. Welcome back to Life Planning 101. My name is Angela Robinson with Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services in Eastland, Texas. Be sure to visit us online at www.kennedy-financial.com. Sign up for our weekly Life Lessons newsletter if you haven't already. We've got a great selection. We got an entire library of articles. I was trying to remember when we actually started writing. I think it was 2007. So incredible font of information. We're big believers in educating, because we think, knowledge is power that allows you to be able to make wise decisions during good times and bad, right? And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're talking about the truth about guarantees. The question is, are guarantees enough? And I think they're getting talked about a lot right now just because of interest rates and the environment that we're in. And there is a place for guarantees. They are not the devil, despite how I've kind of described them in the last couple segments of the show, but they can be very misleading. And they should never, ever, ever be implemented in some vacuum cell where you're not looking at your overall life plan. It reminds me of, like, if you ever gotten on Facebook in January and you look for a set of weights or you look for a treadmill or something, you can't find anything on Marketplace. It gets gone, right? But you get on there like in June or July and everybody's getting rid of their fitness equipment, right? Well, the problem with a guarantee or a guaranteed product is most of them, you're stuck with them for at least a little while. Some of them you're stuck with forever. They're irrevocable decisions. And so you can't take them back. And so I think it's really important that these are not something that should just be a light, nonchalant, oh, I just want to do this. No, you really need to be thinking about what you're doing. Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit more. We discussed kind of how inflation hits annuities before the break. And we talked about how that could be a very big hit, especially early on in retirement, and what that could do to your overall plan. We've also talked about the fact that they're misleading. Guarantees can be misleading. They're not always misleading, but they can be misleading because they are not too good to be true. Yes, guarantees are not too good to be true, simply because you're usually giving up something to get them. Okay? Sometimes that's pure expense, cost you a lot. In fact, I've seen some annuities when you add up the charges, oh gosh, it's like over 3.5% a year of annual charges on guaranteed amounts. So even if your account value drops, you could be charging more on that situation than your account value. And then ultimately, it's like a double whammy on that account value. It just keeps, it's an exorbitant amount that they can't keep up, right? So you can't ever get out of it because otherwise you're going to lose the guarantees and you lose everything. That's a scary thing. It's a really scary thing. And make sure you know that going in. So let's kind of go through this. So here's some things that you could be giving up. Number one, you could be giving up the growth on your income or the asset itself. We kind of just talked about that. If you have an annuity, for example, that's paying lifetime for 2 lives, maybe maybe there is an inflation bump in there, but maybe it's only 1 or 2%. Well, how does that look in 2022 when your inflation is 8 or back-to-back years, 4.78, 4.13 years in a row? Does that really do it justice? You need to really understand the risk there. Growth on the asset itself. Sometimes you get none. Sometimes you get some. Sometimes you never really get to experience that. I know a lot of guarantees you hear about the market. No matter what the market does, your account value will never go down. Well, that's great. But how much does it actually go up? Because then we look at those inflation numbers again. We see 4.7, 8, 4.1. Did it actually keep up with inflation? No, it didn't. In fact, it lost money. And a net return, it was a negative return. So you were getting a negative return. But you don't really see that inside the annuity. Wow. Okay. Limited growth on the income or the asset itself. Thinking about you're restricted to what that product can do. Okay. And even if it, and I hate to say this, but there's a lot of companies out there that just aren't ethical. I'm sorry. They just aren't. And you've got to be careful because they're able to literally, in today's world and in the insurance world, I am an insurance agent, so I am fully aware of this, but they are able to illustrate illustrations and rates that don't even exist. Basically make them up based on past performance and it'll say it in there in the fine print, right? Big print giveth, little print taketh away. It'll say this illustration will never happen. Yet when they talk to you, they show you an 11% rate. And if we actually went into that and looked at what the historical evidence gives us and who the buyers and sellers in that market is today, it could equate to 2 or 3. So it's really important to understand this, that you don't just take the word of what an illustrated rate says what past performance is. They're tricky. They're very, very tricky. You need to know if you are buying guarantees, you are not going to get all the upside of a market, instrument. It's just not going to happen. Number 3, limited to restriction allocations. So you have what you can pick that's inside of their accounts. You're also limited to their performance, so the company sometimes, or the government, right? Because the government issues these guaranteed instruments as well. We have to remember that. And their ability to manage their finances and investments, whether it be that company or that government. So they don't do well, that could actually hurt your product, and it could be sold. And there's these pension guarantee acts that are in place for these bigger pensions that are backed by these insurance companies for this reason. So it doesn't always look pretty and rosy on the back end. They aren't what you thought they were going to be. So, remember, worst case scenario that you get shown, that's what you really want to rely on. Loss of control of the asset itself, or the ability to change your strategy down the road. A lot of these lock you in either for a long period of time or forever. With that might be hefty surrender charges on top of it. So it's really hard to get out of them. And then additional costs, like we talked about in the beginning, that could just kind of keep compounding. And oh, by the way, probably the biggest is a guarantee is only a guarantee by the company or the government issuing it. Remember that. The guarantee is by the company. So is it really a guarantee? The guarantee is by the government issuing it. Is it really a guarantee? Remember this, everything has risk. Everything does. There is no reward without some amount of risk. So it may not be what you think it is. I say all this lightly because guarantees, like I mentioned before, may have a place in a retirement plan. They may not have a place in a retirement plan. And most often, I will tell you that they don't have the only place in a retirement plan. They simply are not enough. They sound simple, but guarantees are anything but simple. So here's our final words of wisdom. Just like many things, you don't know what you don't know. And it's often what you don't know that could end up hurting you. So our suggestion is to proceed with caution, have a plan, a life plan, a holistic plan, and have a life planner that's helping you look at this from a fiduciary level, no matter who's trying to sell you what product. My name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services and Smart Money Group. Visit us online at www.kennedy-financial.com. Have a great week. God bless you. And join us right here next week on Life Planning 101.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services. If you have questions, you can email them to lifeplanning@kennedy-financial.com. Don't forget to learn how our sister company can assist you with all of your tax, bookkeeping, and consulting needs. You can find out more at briscoeandassociates.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more Life Planning 101. The opinions expressed herein are those of the firm and are subject to change without notice. The opinions referenced are as of the date of publication and are subject to change due to changes in the market or economic conditions and may not necessarily come to pass. Any opinions, projections, or forward-looking statements expressed herein are solely those of the author, may differ from the views or opinions expressed by other areas of the firm, and are only for general informational purposes as of the date indicated. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Smart Money Group LLC. Kennedy Financial Services and Smart Money Group LLC are separate entities and are not owned or controlled by Calton & Associates Incorporated.